For, about 2,000 years, we thought we had a pretty solid handle on what it means to know something. It was this simple, really elegant 3-part recipe. But then, this tiny little 3-page paper comes along and just blows the whole thing apart. It created a puzzle that, honestly, philosophers are still trying to piece back together today.
So let's just dive right in with a question that sounds super simple, but it gets to the absolute heart of the problem. What does it actually take to know something? I mean, really know it, versus just, I don't know, making a lucky guess? For most of human history, the answer to that seemed pretty straightforward.
You see, ever since Plato, the gold standard for knowledge was this idea, justified true belief, or JTB for short. It's a 3-part checklist. First, whatever you believe, well, it has to actually be true. Can't know something that's false, right? Second, you have to genuinely believe it. And third, you need a good reason, a justification for that belief. It seems totally logical, doesn't it?
And this JTB account, it was basically the foundation of epistemology. That's the study of knowledge. It was just this neat and tidy checklist. You tick all 3 boxes, you've got yourself some knowledge. It was simple, it was effective, and it stood strong for centuries. But, well, nothing lasts forever.
And then, 1963 happened. A philosopher named Edmund Gettier published a paper. It looked so unassuming, just 3 pages long. But the thought experiments he packed inside were about to cause a massive earthquake in the world of philosophy. So, what made this little paper such a bombshell? Well, Gettier didn't argue that those JTB conditions were wrong. Nope. He just argued they weren't enough. He came up with these brilliant little stories, these scenarios where someone meets all 3 conditions, they have a justified true belief, and yet you just wouldn't say they actually know anything. Okay, let's walk through one of his famous cases. Picture 2 coworkers, Smith and Jones. Smith has really strong evidence that Jones is going to get the big promotion. The company president even told him so. He also, just by chance, saw that Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. So Smith forms a belief that seems perfectly logical. The man who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket. But, plot twist, the promotion at the last minute goes to Smith instead. And, in an incredible coincidence, Smith, without even realizing it, also has 10 coins in his pocket.
Now stop and think about what just happened there. Was Smith's belief true? Yes, the man who got the job, Smith, did have 10 coins. Was it justified? Absolutely, based on all the evidence he had about Jones. Did he believe it? For sure. So it checks all the JTB boxes. But would you really say Smith knew that? It just feels wrong, doesn't it? He was right purely by accident, for all the wrong reasons.
And this right here is the core of the Gettier problem. It uncovers these weird situations where someone has a justified true belief, but it's only true because of pure dumb luck. And once Gettier kind of opened that door, philosophers started seeing these problems popping up everywhere. What's really fascinating is that people had noticed this kind of thing even before Gettier. The philosopher Bertrand Russell came up with a similar case. Alice looks at a clock, and it reads 2 o'clock. Her belief that it's 2 o'clock is justified. She's looking right at it, and it happens to be true. But here's the catch. The clock is broken. It stopped exactly 12 hours ago. She just happened to look at it at the one moment in the day when it was accidentally correct. Here's another famous one that takes it a step further. Imagine you're driving through fake barn country, an area filled with these super convincing but totally fake barn facades. You happen to glance over and see the one real barn in the whole area. And you think to yourself, hey, there's a barn. Your belief is justified. Your eyes are telling you it's a barn, and it's true. But you're surrounded by fakes you can't even tell apart. Did you really know it was a barn, or did you just get incredibly lucky? In every single one of these cases, the problem is exactly the same. The reason the person believes something, their justification, is totally disconnected from the reason it's actually true. Smith's justification was all about Jones, but the truth was about himself. Alice's justification was a broken clock, but the truth was the actual time. That crucial connection is just severed, and luck is what fills the gap. So, as you can imagine, this discovery sent philosophers scrambling. After Gettier, the race was on to try and save the definition of knowledge. The big question became, how can we tweak that JTB recipe to get rid of all these weird cases of epistemic luck? The responses pretty much split into 3 main camps. Some people just doubled down on JTB, and they argued that, in these Gettier cases, the belief wasn't really justified properly in the first place.
Others tried to scrap justification altogether for a new idea. But by far the most popular approach was to try and add a fourth ingredient to the recipe.
The great hunt for a fourth Gettier-proof condition was on. Some said the fact itself has to cause the belief. Others proposed that the justification has to be indefeasible, meaning there's no hidden truth out there that if you knew it, would wreck your justification, like, say, the fact that the clock is broken. Another cool idea was that your belief has to track the truth, meaning you'd only believe it if it were true and you wouldn't believe it if it were false. But for every clever fix, another philosopher came up with an even cleverer scenario to break it.
So after more than half a century of this debate, has anyone actually solved the Gettier problem? Do we finally have a perfect, airtight definition of knowledge? Well, the short answer is not really.
You know, the real legacy of Gettier's paper isn't some new, shiny definition. It's the realization that knowledge is just way more complicated and subtle than a simple 3-item checklist. It showed us that the relationship between what we believe, what's true, and our reasons for believing it is this incredibly intricate puzzle, and that luck plays a surprisingly sneaky role in everything we think we know. And that leaves us with this really fascinating and maybe a little unsettling question to take with us. The next time you feel absolutely 100% certain that you know something, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is my reason for believing this really connected to why it's true? Or am I just looking at a broken clock at the perfect time?